Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, May 4th, 2023. And our top story today is a commercial real estate crash on the horizon. Joining me now to discuss this, break it all down, and a lot more, Deidre Woollard is with the Motley Fool. Deidre, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I always love chatting real estate with you, Deidre. So knowledgeable in so many different areas. Today, we're going to be talking about commercial real estate, and it's probably no surprise to you and to our audience, but this is a sector that has really started to lag significantly, mainly, I would think, because of the return to office. Want to get your or the lack of the return to office, I should say. Want to get your perspective on where the real estate sector sits today.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before about the return to work. It appears right now that it's sort of stabilized. We're sort of at a place where we're not seeing a lot of movement anymore of either going back to the office or requests for remote work. Although I am seeing a couple of large companies starting to make more pronouncements again. So that could shift, but for now it's been sort of steady.
And Deidre, I've been reading, and I want to get your thoughts about regional banks and some of the banks. We've already been through a kind of a quasi-banking crisis with Silicon Valley Bank. First Signature, I think, is the other one. I mean, there are
Signature
several
and
that
First Republic, yeah.
First Republic, I get them all wrong. I apologize to those brands. But is this creating stress for the banking industry because for banks in general, because they rely on the payments? A lot of them hold real estate. Then not only are they owners of real estate, but they hold real estate, they have investors. Is this another sign of weakness for banks potentially?
It's something to look at. I'm trying to stay away from the headlines that sort of predict doom. I don't think this is the great financial crisis, but there is a situation here where a lot of, especially small regional banks, have a lot of commercial real estate loans, which just makes sense because if you're getting a loan for an office building in a town, you'll probably work with a local bank versus some of the larger banks. So that does mean that some of the regional banks are under a little more stress in a time when office is probably at its weakest.
Yeah, and I want to echo your sentiments. I mean, we need to stay away from these big headlines. We're not trying to draw eyeballs. We want to make sure that we are analyzing a subject, a topic very prudently. Are there particular areas of the country, Deidre, when you look at the map of the United States, that maybe in commercial real estate that are underperforming? I mean, for example, California, San Francisco, New York. I mean, these are big metropoli. Are there segments of the US that are doing worse off than others?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. San Francisco is definitely one of them. You mentioned First Republic earlier, that just got taken over by JP Morgan Chase. They had a lot of branches in both San Francisco and Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, we've seen a couple of high profile buildings in downtown LA go into receivership. San Francisco market vacancy rate has been very high. So yeah, it seems the West Coast has been hard hit. New York, little weakness in Boston, although not that much because more of that real estate is research and development and lab real estate. Austin, Texas is starting to worry me a little bit because there's so much supply coming on in office because we had the big tech boom there a couple of years ago. Now you've got more office supply. Is it going to be absorbed quickly? So that one is a little bit of a concern for me.
Yeah, let's talk about, you've got office space, but there's other aspects to commercial real estate too. I think it's National Small Business Month. I mean, there's last month was National Autism Month. We covered that, but I think this is National Small Business Month, if I'm not mistaken, May is. But there's a lot of pressure on small businesses. They are big renters or leasers of retail space in malls, in office buildings, in the lower sections of office buildings. Is this a sector that you're concerned about? Kind of the smaller retail segment of commercial real estate?
Retail is interesting. Retail has been surprisingly strong. Some smaller retail, I think you have to worry about. I think you have to worry about ground floor retail in major office buildings. That's a concern. Some of the central business district real estate, but overall retail has performed a lot stronger than people expected, and it sort of is something to keep in mind because people a few years ago were saying retail is doomed. No one's going to the mall again. It's all over. So when we have these cycles where someone predicts doom, it's important to realize that sometimes that can be overblown.
I would say, I mean, my personal opinion, you don't have to give your answer. 95% of the time, it's overblown and trying to sell headlines. Last question before we go to a commercial break. I've read about some companies not paying on their commercial real estate loans. What's the risk here for, like, I think not Tesla, Twitter, maybe one, there's some others. What's the risk of foreclosure? I mean, as a owner, as a landlord, you want someone to rent that space. If someone decides to not pay you, now you're not getting the expected payments that you would for your balance sheet.
One of the things I'm watching is that some of the high profile asset managers, Brookfield, for example, have let some of those properties go into special servicing. Part of the reason they do that, though, is to get back to the negotiating table. I mean, the bottom line is banks don't really want to have this office real estate on, they don't want to deal with it any more than they wanted to own houses during the great financial crisis. So there's definitely going to be some room for negotiation, but for some of these, it just is going to make more sense to basically turn in the keys if you can't lease out the whole thing and get the rents to make it make sense.
Well, Deidre, as I said, I need to take a very quick break. We've got to pay the bills here. We come back, we'll talk more about commercial real estate. What do you do with those vacant offices? We're going to talk to Deidre about it. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're joined this morning by Deidre Woollard of the Motley Fold. Deidre, thanks so much for sticking with us this morning. Really appreciate you hanging around as always for segment number 2.
Thank you.
All right, so there's a lot of pressure. It's not the big headlines that were all doom and gloom. We're not going to go through 2008 again, but there is a lot of pressure on commercial real estate. Deidre, what do you do with these vacant offices? I mean, should I go next door here in Charlotte and maybe try to make one into an apartment, a giant apartment for my wife and cats?
Well, that is the problem, is that these don't convert into residential apartments very easily. Some of them do. I mean, a lot depends on the floor plan, but there have been a couple of surveys done of how many of the buildings can really be repurposed easily, and it's not good. There's just not. These buildings were built to be offices. They're not built. They don't have the plumbing. They don't have the right electrical. They're not really built to be residential. I'm more looking at other more creative uses, maybe some like warehousing and data center kind of space, more sort of business related spaces. But I don't think that we're going to see all of the buildings in an central business district suddenly become residential.
And I mean, data centers, we need more data centers. I mean, you and I have talked about this. I mean, that is an area that did really well during the pandemic, I think, because everyone was going remote. I mean, everyone was Zooming or Skyping or using Microsoft Teams. So they needed more space. Can you bring that into a urban area? A lot of the server farms are out in gosh knows where. I think they're even talking about putting them under the ocean or floating them on top of the ocean.
Well, it wouldn't be the kind of data center that you see sort of out in the middle of nowhere. There'd be these sort of smaller edge computing locations that would, not be this like massive thing. But the problem with that too is the power grid, and you don't want to overstress the power grid. You've also got a potential cooling issue. These buildings, data centers require a lot of power, a lot of water for cooling. So there would be risks and expenses with that as well. And of course, there's with everything, there's a zoning concern, because most of the buildings that you're looking at, they're areas that are zoned for commercial and very specific uses.
Deidre, here's one out of left field, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. I mean, green buildings, that was it. When commercial real estate was booming, one of the things we talked about was making a green building, making it eco-friendly, making it sustainable. Does the lack of renters or leasers or lessees, I guess, does that signal maybe, hey, we need to put the sustainable or eco-friendly environment aside and just try to get someone in the door to begin leasing our office floors?
Well, that's actually a really great question, because in New York City, they have this thing called Local Law 97, which is coming online in 2024. And it's got all of these different rules for how buildings need to be retrofitted to for things like emissions, energy, things like that. So far, there's no plans to stop that, but there would be a lot of fines for these buildings that don't go through these relatively expensive retrofits. So I think it's a huge question, because what we thought a few years ago was that bill was going to come online. Other cities were going to enact these things, and all of these landlords were going to have to go through that process. We'll see how it plays out, but that one is definitely a concern. But the other aspect too is we are seeing what they call a flight to quality, which is that anyone who is looking for space is looking absolutely for eco-friendly. They're looking for quality buildings. So you actually kind of still have to do it if you want to attract top tier tenants.
But do you have to be flexible? I mean, I understand you're trying to attract tenants, but do you have to be flexible in terms of what you charge them? Because if you're not, if you were charging them $5,000 a month, I'm just making this up. I don't even know what rent costs in New York. I'm sure it's a lot more than $5,000. But if you're charging them X, you have to give them more. For example, maybe you give them I don't know, glass brick, or you give them a better office space. Is that, are there contingencies that you have to put in here that really make it not solvents for, the landlord?
What I'm hearing anecdotally is a lot of creativity. So yes, some of it would be improvements to the space. Some of it might be, if it's a 5-year lease, that the terms sort of go up over time based on, predicting that the economy will be in a better space in a few years. So I think you have a lot of flexibility happening. In some cases, we're seeing a lot of subleases in different markets. So you're seeing just wide varieties of creativity, really on both sides, because what I'm seeing is that companies still want some space. They just don't want the level of space they had. And so originally, if someone was maybe leasing up a new building, they would assume that one tenant would take the whole floor. Now they're sort of dividing up a little bit more. So yeah, lot of creativity happening on both sides.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see how this all fleshes out. We've been talking about return to the office, Deidre, for a while now. I feel like we've been talking about it for like 24 months, and still people have not returned to the office.
Some
Who
have.
knows? But some have, but not all of them. And I think the employers are kind of thinking about turning the thumb screws a little bit more. We're going to have to see how that all works out. Deidre Woollard, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for your awesome insights, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Always great to see you.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more in all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, we'll visit our website, and of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. We'll have another very special guest. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.